Okay, thanks again to the ladies there for their introduction and all that, and all very welcome here. And I think the best news I had this weekend was when I got the parish bulletin on Saturday evening and saw that it was free. So at least I said they're not going to be charged to come in and listen to me. So I'd have been very disappointed. We look at the Valley of Glenfarne now, and you'll see when you look at it, the houses are quite sparse on it, and there's a lot of forestry. That wasn't the case when John McGivern returned from America almost 90 years ago. This hall will be 90 years old next year. Now, not this hall. This hall is a bit like, does any of you ever watch Only Fools and Horses? Well, if any of you ever watch Fools and Horses, and Trick is the guy who sweeps the street, and he's telling that he's been sweeping for 15 or 16 years with the same brush. And then he said it had so many handles and so many heads. The rainbow's the same. It's had so many makeovers in the 90 years, but it stands virtually on that site. I would say the population of Glenfarne at that particular time was somewhere around 3,500 people. Population today, 700 or 800. Glenfarne that time, 7 primary schools, about 250 pupils, 1 school, 60 to 70 maximum pupils. So that tells you about the decline in the population. So certainly people felt he was crazy to build the hall then. Certainly it would be crazy to embark on something like that now. But nevertheless, with effort and work and his imagination, he did build a hall that is known nationally and internationally with all of the different things he added to it. We have here with us today Charlie Cullen, who's probably one of the very few people that's here with us today that remembers the old hall before the first refurbishing took place in the early 1950s. The old galvanised hall that was here. And some of the galvanised iron was still here right up on a few years ago when the last makeover or facelift was added to the rainbow. But at that particular time when he came back here, dance halls were in their very infancy. There was very, very few of them anywhere in rural Ireland. People at that stage would have danced on what we used to call barn lofts, country house dances, and crossroad dancing. And I mean, that would maybe what have inspired him, because he originally came from just up the Manorhamilton Road here, was the dancing that would have taken place at the crossroads here in Glenfarne. And there's articles written about that. There's one by Peggy Lynch in the Leitrim Guardian about the dancing that was taking place here. When did dancing start? Well, dancing's been around as long as human beings have been around. And certainly it was very much part of the Celts here thousands of years ago. All you have to do is watch the play, Dancing at Lunasa, and you get that impression. But even in my lifetime, I saw dances on Thor Mountain on the second Sunday in June, which would coincide with the Celtic summer solstice celebrations. There was a dancing flag up there, and people went up there and danced. Before my time, there was huge crowds of people up there. And one of my memories of up there, and we were talking that this should be from a woman's perspective, and maybe some of you people down here should be up here telling about how you saw the dance halls and saw the whole thing. And when I look back now, even though I was only very young at the time I was up there, probably 9, 10, 11, during that age of the few times. And I used to have to beg to get up there because my mother had visions of me falling in a bog hole or something like that happened to me up there, because a lot of sheep used to get lost in holes on Thor Mountain, and she probably felt. But anyway, I survived my trips up there. But mind you, some of the sort of, I don't know what you would call it, with some of the girls, mine be left a little bit to be desired when you think in today's world. Certainly some of the things that was happening to some of the girls up there that time was a lot more sort of hands-on than the president of the Spanish Football Federation and the trouble that he got into. So if we think now, and it was the same thing at the dances, you know. When I look back and think of it now, you know, on that left-hand side where the row of chairs is, all the girls standing along there, all the men here on the right-hand side, and every hall you went to was the same. And I went in later years to England where it was an awful lot worse. and some of the scrums of the men rushing forward to the ladies would make the match on last Saturday evening between Ireland and South Africa look like infants playing in the schoolyard. So the thing would, and I mean, girls would get pushed up against the wall there. Some would escape here into the cloakrooms. They might escape for various reasons. One was that the guy that they thought might ask them dance had asked somebody else to dance, or they just wanted to get away from it. But it wouldn't have been, I would say, it most of the time would have been enjoyable. Some of it wouldn't have been. So I suppose we're talking here, and the ladies referred to women in history and how their lives has been always downgraded. And I just thought of that, yeah, you think it was the same at the dances. They had to wait for the man to come over to ask them to dance. What the hell was wrong that the men didn't stand along here and let the women walk up and down past and look at them and make a sign like this and point at the floor? And you know, it was the first time we ever saw sign language was here in the Rainbow, when they'd be pointing at the, but I mean, that was the thing about it. I went to a dance in Dublin in 1966, and it was a big surprise. There was 3 ladies' choices in the dance. That was something that nearly stopped when I started going to the dancing, was the ladies' choice. But there was 3 on that night, and the girls did walk across the floor in a more dignified and respectable manner and asked the men out to dance. Of course, people were under the impression that bands got huge money. The first time they played here, they got £30. Between them and the backup in the van, there was 8 of them. That's what they got, £30. And John McGivern was impressed, and he said, look, lads, I'll give you 5 bookings for the next 12 months, and I'll increase the money you get by a fiver every time, and I expect you to increase the crowd every time you come by the same amount. And they did. And of course, the fellow says the rest is history. I suppose a long talk there about the hall here. There was halls then sprouted up all over the country after that. And if you take just North Leitrim and just a little bit of West Cavan, Black Lion, Dubally, Buran, you had dance halls in them, and then you had the hall here, just a couple of miles up the road. You had what's called Fildy's Hall, Tommy Keeney's Hall there. Then in Manorhamilton, you had St. Clair's Hall and McSharry's Hall. But strangely enough, in my lifetime, and even before that, dancing was never a thing that took off in Manorhamilton. I suppose they had the cinema and that, but it never had the same swing as the rest of the places. And then you had a hall, a Creevy Hall, really had a very, very successful period from it opening. We'll just talk a little bit about Creevy Hall later on. You had Differing Hall in Glencar, you had a hall in Glenaid, so you had halls all over North Leitrim. And I suppose one of the things that we have to remember with John McGivern when he got the licence here too, we talked about the dancing earlier on, how it was on bar and laughs and different things. And the whole problem with halls was Jimmy's Hall, when he returned from America and opened the hall, in which is book written, film, play done by the Abbey Theatre about it and everything like that. And I mean, if you got an example of what to do to be successful and what not to do to be successful, was Jimmy and John McGivern. Jimmy went against the church and the state and tried to do his own thing. He didn't last long, because at that time, both of them were very, very prominent in the country, and you daredn't take them on. So he did, and he didn't win. McGivern did the very opposite. Then licence came in, licence for halls. John McGivern was successful in getting a licence. Before that, nobody got a licence unless you were an organisation. That's why you have Hibernian Halls, Temperance Halls, Pioneer Halls, all the different organisations. And the church was able to get them, but McGivern got a hall. It's a big, long story. He eventually got it in Kiltyclogher in court after being turned down a couple of times in Manorhamilton. He went to the court in Kilty and he got a licence for 12 months. Judge told him better have the men dancing than smuggle them. So that was the reason that he got it. So that was how he got the hall here. And then, as Jerry explained in that with the expansion that he did to the hall here in 1953. Of course, McGivern's time here is a long time past now. And we just glance on this for a little bit. And that was that the hall then, from John McGivern left it in the 70s, it went through a period here where it was the ranch house, it was all sorts of different things. Different management companies and hall companies bought it and tried to make it successful. And it was lying here derelict when the local priest of the time, the late Father Patsy Young, came up with the brainwave of buying it in 1977. And he bought the hall of Top Rank Promotions. They were the owner of the hall at that particular time, and he bought it. He rented it, or they'd done a deal with Top Rank that they would run dances from sort of November till Christmas, and then at Christmas have to make a decision. So on New Year's Eve, whether it was 1977 or 78, depends on the start of the meeting and the finish it. The hall became the property of the parish of Glenfarne. It's now been run by the community in Glenfarne, and they've been running it since this. Commercial dancing stopped here in a general thing of a dance every week in the late 80s. But it ran successfully up to that. The community has took it, it's been refurbished, as we can very much see. But the thing about the dances and the dances in the local halls, whether it was in Kilteetlogher or whether it was in Fildy's Hall or here in the Rainbow, was that it was the main outlet for people. And the Ballroom of Romance, the book and the plays and the films, I don't think they did justice to what happened here in the Rainbow, because they showed it in a light. Now, I remember when I started coming here, I first came in here to dance in 1961. The thing of a fellas coming drunk at that particular time were few and far between. And out there at the mineral bar, you'd see fellas with big packets of silver mints, chewing hell out of them, trying to get the smell of drink off their breath because they couldn't ask someone to dance. They were afraid. And that, I mean, that is a fact. I saw them myself. But most of the fellas that I went to dances here with, the great majority of them were not drinking. I'm talking about that particular period. It was probably the time that we grew up, but we didn't drink. You know, we didn't. And I mean, a lot of us immigrated, and we still were pioneers. At that time, the people that went to the pub were a particular group, but I mean, it showed again, and I think the Ballroom of Romance really hits the nail on the head when it talks about women in it. And the way the Bridie is shown in the book and in the film and in the play, the lonely life that she's leading out in the country. I mean, she was probably an extreme, but therefore she stayed around to look after her father. And I mean, that she came to the Rainbow as a very, very young girl, and then over the years, all the different girls that came with her had either got married or immigrated, and she still kept coming to the dance. It was her one and only outlet. She was there looking after her father, looking after the farm, and then she had no other outlet except the Sunday night in the dance, like the Rainbows or like the other halls. You know, we were just talking about, you know, Pontumio. That was where Monsignor Horton started off. He went to America and raised the funds to build the hall in Mayo. And then, of course, there was the spat between himself and the Reynoldses, and the devil was supposed to have appeared there. And the Reynoldses thought that would close the hall, but Monsignor Horton turned it into a huge publicity thing. I mean, the hall, the nights you couldn't get near the hall, not alone get into it with the crowds. I don't know whether they were coming to see the devil or see what they were coming to see, but it had the same effect as later in '85 the moving statues had. It brought people from all over the place. The Reynoldses became huge promoters. Were all land, Cloudland, Wonderland, and they had all these ballrooms, and they all belonged to the Reynoldses promotion. Albert Reynolds went on to become Taoiseach of the country, and he was one of the main promoters. He was part Aiken Promotions, now is part of what Albert Reynolds started. But McGivern had a thing, and he worked very closely with Burns that owned the Silver Slipper in Strandhill, who was another huge successful hall. And in Sligo they built a new hall, the Las Vegas. I spent massive money on it and decorated and done everything to make it modern, but still the crowd still kept going to Strandhill, and Las Vegas closed after a lot of years. It wasn't successful. And I mean, just talking today, the bandmen and the lads who were coming at that particular time, a lot of them were very good musicians. People say, oh, they were only strong. They were good musicians. Because we had an example there recently where a photograph of a band was found. And the late Frankie Maguire, Lord rest him, was still alive at the time, saw the band and said, oh, that's our band. That was the local band here that played in Fildy's Hall, and Frank the Maguires were in it. And the person that had the photograph said, well, how did you find the music? Or where did you get it? He said, we could all read music. Every one of the people that played in Fildy's band that was playing instruments in it, maybe John Joe on the accordion wasn't, but the rest of them could read music. They got music sheets and they were fit to read it. So that was the level that they understood music at. So if they were playing music, they knew what they were doing. So I think that maybe over the years the country and western became very popular, but in my opinion it kind of deteriorated the type of music that was played. Because as I said to somebody here, there was the Melody Aces was playing in the Silver Slipper in Strandhill one night, and there was a blackout. The entire Sligo, Strandhill and the whole area was knocked out. But the dance went on. They got lights and put them up, and they were fit to take out the saxophone and the trumpet and the trombone and whatever they had and play the music and entertain them for the night. I'd say if you had a blackout now, you wouldn't have too much music. So that was the difference of the time. So if we get back again to the type of thing from a women's dancing point of view, and we'll throw it open to the floor later on and let people talk about it and tell of their experiences, whether it was in the Rainbow or in Fildy's or wherever it was, how much they enjoyed it. And I want everyone to tell a story. I'll tell a very quick story about what happened to me in the Galtymore in Cricklewood one night. I don't know if some of you were probably in the Galtymore. A few people smiling here, of course. It was a massive hall. And was the Modern Hall, as it was called, and the Cayley Hall. But I was in one night in what was Modern Hall, and myself and this guy from Clare, and we were standing anyway, and it got awful pushing and shoving. And the women, an awful lot of them worked in Smiths, up the road, Cricklewood, near the bus depot, and some of them, they were being pushed up against the stage. The space that the women had here was good, but in the Galtee was very poor because the stage was there, the door into the Modern Hall was here, there was the stairs there, and all the rest. And so anyway, your man was from Clare, of course, loved Irish music, so he said to me, oh, we'll go up to the Cayley Hall, come on, we'll go up the hill. So up we goes to Cayley Hall. As we just go to the top of the stairs, there's two girls standing there, obviously had escaped from the shoving match down and pushing and hauling downstairs, and we asked them out to dance, and your man's walking up and down the middle of the floor shouting, 3 rows facing 3, 4 facing 4, 3 rows, see Juventus. And 4 fellas go, no, 4 lads starts to swing, putting them off, trying to line them up as much as he could. So we were above anyway, and we were swinging, 4 of us. And your man let go, so I went back on my backside. So when I was getting up, I made a kick like that, and I had a pair of light slip-on shoes with me, and the shoe flew off, and it went in over the canopy of the stage. And there was this, which I thought looked like a solid mahogany oak canopy. So anyway, of course, didn't say nothing, waited till the dance started, climbed up on a pile of chairs and tried to reach in to get my shoe. And of course it was only Beauty Board that was up. And the next thing, Beauty Board, chairs and myself crashing down to the floor and no shoe, and there was snow outside. And the next thing, 2 massive bouncers from East London picked me up, and I'm off heading down about 18 inches above the floor. And lucky enough, the accordion player comes down with my shoe. And he said, the 2 boys, no, he said, no, somebody threw his shoe up there. He said, he stood up for me. I would have sort of known the lad, all right. He said, someone threw his shoe up there. So after a bit of pleading, I finally got my shoe and got it on. The 2 bouncers let me go, and there was a Lynn Hobbs. Some of the older ones might remember a famous boxer from the East End of London called Billy Walker. Lynn Hobbs was a first cousin of his. He had a flat nose, scars all over his eyes, covered in tattoos, and completely shaved head, like your man out of EastEnders. It was complete. And he let me go anyway, and anyway, sort of stepping around wondering would I be thrown out or left there. Didn't mind being thrown out once, had my shoe on me. And he says to me after a while, all right then, don't let this happen again, right? He said, but would you please show me who threw your shoe up there? He said, and I'll deal with him. So anyway, I got away with it. So some of you can tell the story. That is absolutely true. That's exactly what happened in the Galtymore. But the Bamba in Kilburn now, it was something else. And I mean, whatever the hell you used to do, they were always selling teas over at the far end, and they always seemed to, the floor seemed to be wet in it. But after that, then I suppose the Gresham in Holloway Road, then there was a new dance hall in Kilburn after that, so the standards of the halls improved in it. But there was another hall down in Ramford, and it was only a glorified loft. It was about 4 stories up. And there was this guy, he was Lyons was his name, that owned him, a massive, huge man. And he, again, there'd be a siege of Innocent in the middle of it. And he would go down the floor, Lyons, I can see, and he'd say, for God's sake, lads, take the girls nice and easy. Christ, lads, take the girls. We fellas tearing them round the place. So I don't know how, maybe that was enjoyable. I don't, maybe looking back, and as the late Brian Linehan said, in mature reflection, I don't think it was all enjoyable from the ladies' point of view in the dance. They're here today and they'll be able to talk for themselves later on about that. But there was great enjoyment, there was great fun. And I mean, as it became known later on, all the halls were dry halls. There was no bars in them. And it was the long time, I was quite a while in London before the bars were introduced. The bar in the Hibernian in Fulham Broadway, there was a bar in the Galtymore, then there was a bar downstairs. So finally there were more bars, places for drinking than there was for dancing. But they nevertheless offered a home from home for the Irish people in England. And I was listening to the radio today and they were talking about people who came from other countries and lived the same life. The majority of Irish that went to London nearly lived the same life as they did here. And again, it meant going to the dance on a Sunday night. The only thing in London was there was dances 7 nights a week. You know, there was dances even in New Cross and the Gresham on Monday night. There was dances every night. Manor House on a Wednesday night. There was always dances in all the different halls. So if you wanted to go out and dance, there was plenty. Some of us went out 7 nights a week. We never learned to dance though. But anyway, it was still going around with 2 left feet, and I was too old for still learning how to dance. But we did enjoy them, and they were very, very enjoyable. And they did offer an entertainment. And it's unfortunate that they sort of faded away, and still there to a certain extent, but they did fade away. And there was never, as the ladies have said here, there was never a proper record kept of it, and they're trying to build up a picture of it. It was good to get Johnny Macaroni, as he called himself, singing, "Have you ever been lonely? Have you ever been blue?" I suppose in the Rainbow, if that didn't happen, and remember when he was very sick for a short time, and Michael Dolan took over as sort of MC here, I think people greatly missed that sort of thing. It was part of the tradition. He used to tell the story here several times. He told the story, you know, people, well, what should a fella say to a girl? And this guy, I knew, was wanting to know what, and, you know, your man said to him, well, you know, you could say to her, your eyes are like the stars that light up at night. And your man, anyway, and like myself, he got a bit tongue-tied, as you sometimes would when you'd ask somebody out to dance. And he didn't know, and he said to her, so she smiled at him, and he looked, he said, your teeth are like the stars. And she says, how do you make that out? He says, because they come out at night. So that was the sort of stories that John McGivern would tell here in the hall to the people. But he had a unique personality, and I suppose that's what made him survive. But I think what Charlie was talking here to us earlier on about the huge population was in the area. And with the decline of the population and the introduction of the car, people then could go further afield. So the small halls like the Blue Haven in Kiltyclare, Fildy's, and all of the other halls went by the wayside. And it had been a struggle. But always have to remember here in Glenfarne the huge support that came from Northern Ireland here to the hall. The bus from Enniskillen would be absolutely packed. Slight problems in the late 50s, early 60s when the teddy boys started to arrive. You know, with the hair slicked back and the curl coming down the nose here, and the real drain pipe trousers and the real long pointy-toed shoes on them, and the jacket jacket, a long jacket with a velvet collar on it, and they were the teddy boys. But they never really caused a lot of problems here because there was nobody to sort of challenge them. You know, there was the mods and rockers, but there was no rockers here or anything like that to challenge the teddy boys that came. But again, the people that come here from Enniskillen, a lot of them, they all came to dance. But at that particular time, you see, if you were living here in the south and you had a car, you had to have the car bonded, or it's called. So then if you went down to Northern Ireland late at night, you had to have a request and you had to pay for to come back. So that, of course, I always said, stop the fellas from the south being able to get girls from the north, whereas a lot of fellas from the north got girls from the south because they could leave them home and they had no worries about going back, whereas the fella that was here, he had to have a request to come back, and that was going to cost extra money. So whatever, money was scarce, Charlie. Huh? 2 shillings, and the dance was only 5. So you brought the girl in and paid 2 shillings for their request. It made it expensive night. So whatever about the romantic interludes and whatever about love, the money still came into it even at that time. So that was a problem. But I mean, I remember coming to the dances here, there was no car park here. There was just a narrow road in here, mostly bicycle. Whatever cars would be there would be parked along the side of the road. Well, it wouldn't be a huge amount of cars, but the buses from Sligo didn't just work as well as the bus. Then McDolan got minibuses, and there used to come a minibus from Rosinver, minibus from Glangevlin, minibus from Manor Hamilton, and and of course a car at that time, we look at a car now and people say, what? 3, 4, 5. A car at that time could bring anything from 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, depending on what size they were. And I see Nuala McAnulty here, and her father used to provide for us the seats for coming to, he didn't know it, but he did provide us the seats for coming to the Rainbow, because we went down on Packy Lee's pick-up, and we used a couple of bales of hay out of Eugene McAnulty's shed to sit on. So that was our transport down here. And there was indeed an accident one time with a fellow with a lorry that was going to a dance with a load of people on the back of it, but I think nobody was seriously injured, so they escaped. But that was the sort of transport at the time. Unfortunate thing about it was that even in them days, the back of the pickup, hygiene and cleaning wouldn't be great, so the women were never expected to get up on the back of the lorry. Though in desperation, I did see a few glad to let down the loading door and get up to get a lift home because they didn't fancy the walking up here from the Rainbow. So all in all, the dances, as the man said there about the show bands fading away, I suppose the peak period of the show bands was the 60s. There really was the time, he said there was over 500 bands in the country. And you can think that there was at least 10 people involved in every band, and then there was a few people promotion. And there was the van driver, and there was all those things. So you're talking 5,000 to 6,000 people employed in show band alone in this country. And then, of course, the top 10 came in, then it was always the top 20 on Radio Luxembourg. Your man, what was he? He used to promote the pools, Horace, whatever his name was, then for draw a method on how to win millions on the pools, or thousands it was that time. So he would do it. So then about 1961, 62, I remember it was on a Monday evening, the first ever Irish top 10. Some of the records that was in that was Bobby Darin singing Things. It was Carl from Bel. There was about, there was 2 or 3, and then the Irish bands got very much into it. But then the whole thing changed because it became promotions. The mainliners were saying there that they had a manager who also managed the hall in Monaghan. But then you had Lockman Promotions, you had all the different promotions. So the show bands had to sign up to that. They had to sign up. They wouldn't get bookings in halls. They would have to give a percentage, 2, 3, or 4%, to the agents to book them into the Rainbow or into the halls wherever they were. And if they didn't toe the line on that, they wouldn't last very long. And some bands went to the wall because they did not fall in line with that. And then the pirate radio stations sprung up, and then if you were part of because they promoted the bands or owned them, they owned the stations, so they played the music of them. They played, and then there was all the things with the DJs in RTE. And I remember show band crowd giving us an outline here, and he said, unless you were looking after the DJs in RTE or somebody in RTE, the chances of getting your record are so, I think there was problems there before ever it showed its head in the Late Late Show with RTE. I'm talking about the mid-60s and early 70s at that particular time. The bands, you couldn't get them to go home then. Here locking up the hall, if you know, then we were not to make tea for them in the band, so they'd be looking for tea. Then they'd start to play cards. And, you know, they would never get them to go home. They'd get them out of the hall and get the hall locked. They'd hang around and hang around. They were never in any hurry. And then some of them would take down a guitar and they might start playing bits among themselves. So there was an awful problem with them there. But the parish ran the hall very, very successfully here for 10 or 11 years, voluntary. All the people voluntary, and there was quite a bit of people needed because the 3 emergency doors, and after problems about locking them, they had to have a person on each door. They had to have 2 people in the box office, ticket office, 2 people doing the door, people working the kitchen and all that. But again, even though I'm only talking about the late 70s, the number of people in the area were so much greater than they are today. And I mean, it was a place where, again, I suppose it was part of the thing when you think of it. The teas and all of that and cloakrooms were all manned by ladies, whereas the emergency doors and the doors and all that, I don't think any of them would be looking to do them jobs anyway, but it was just very much along male and female lines. We just have a couple of slides here on a few other halls. This is Creevy Hall. It's now an industrial site. It opened in 1947 and they continued dancing there up until the 70s. It was another, I mean, you can know by there that it was slightly bigger than the thing. The Creevy Hall covered Drumkeerdon Parish, Inishmagrat Parish, and that was in parish ownership there, and a lot of money was collected for it. So the Creevy Hall was one of the halls that worked in they didn't work in competition. People always tried to stagger them, and of course the Saturday night dancing is another thing to remember. The Saturday night dancing didn't start here until the 70s. And the Sunday night dancing was always up until that. So it was Saturday night dancing didn't come to this part of the country until the late 70s. Could we see the next one, Jonas, please? Now, that's another one about Creevy Hall, and that's Micheál Woods there. So this is the Clune Ceilidh Band. They went to England, so you had the mixture of the Ceilidh bands and the modern bands. Now, Jerry spoke there at the end about the Kevin Wood Show Band. The Kevin Wood Show Band, the members of it, 3 of them went and played in the Hibernian and Fulham Broadway. Micheál Woods, Tony Walpole, and the other 3 of them played for several years in the resident band. A lot of the bands, smaller bands, when they broke up, a lot of them went over to London and they became part of the resident band, because every hall there had a resident band that would pay some of the nights, and then they would act as backup to the visiting bands from Ireland. Another thing, a big thing, of course, which we didn't talk about, was Lent. Shrove Tuesday night, when the dance was finished here on Shrove Tuesday night, until Easter Sunday night, there was no dances. So that was it. The dancing stopped, and that's when it really started in London, because you had all of the ones. We see the next one there, Jonas, please. Yeah, this is Dancing at the Crossroads. Now, this is a reenactment of the Dancing at the Crossroads. It's not any original, because you can see it in colour, so it wouldn't be. So it's just a reenactment that was done of Dancing at the Crossroads. That is also an article from the Leitrim Guardian. Okay, have you one more there? Yeah, this is Tom Dunphy. Just brought that up. Tom Dunphy was the band leader of the Royal Show Band, and the Royal Show Band was at their time. They won the Carl Allen Award in 1962. That was the award for the top bands in England, and they entered it and they won it. And that was a huge achievement at that particular time. A great story, which take all night to tell it, of Brendan Byer and Tom Dunphy and the setting up of the band. And Tom Dunphy was the man that was the main man behind setting up the Royal Show Band, who had massive success, brought huge crowds all over the country. And one of the things we talked there to some of them about Brendan Byer, and you know, about Well, what I saw with Brendan Byer was he was playing in the Galtymore one night, and the Crown was mobbed. But anyway, however they managed it, Peter, the governor of the Crown, managed it. He got Brendan to come down and sing 2 songs in the Crown in Cricklewood, and he sung Jerusalem. And there was a guy from Mayo, the poor man was blind. He used to play the piano accordion, and he'd be all scratched and marked because he'd be walking in, going home. But anyway, he was, and the only backing that Brendan Byer had in the Crown that night was this guy on a piano accordion. But it didn't stop Byer from hitting all the top notes, and really brilliant. And poor Tom and himself was off for a night, and Brendan went to Bundoran, and they were to meet up in Bundoran, and they were to go on to Donegal or something to play that evening. So while Brendan... Dunlo, yeah, but while Brendan was waiting for him, Tom Dunphy on his way down crashed. There's a little monument to him there now where the Mohill Road turns off the N4, and Tom Dunphy was... Tom Dunphy's song was I Heard a Bluebird Sing. That was the song that Tom himself recorded, because Brendan had the Hucklebuck shoes and all of those. So is that the end of it? And that's the rainbow again to finish it off there. Okay, this time I am finished with it. So we will probably hand over here to some of the girls that would take over, and if you have any questions or anyone wants to add their own stories to it. So I hope that some brought back memories or was a little bit of information to you, and thanks very much for your attention.
And hold hands. And 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, clap, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, one more. Round the house. Hold hands. And that's you.
Absolutely, I love to dance here. I really enjoyed the Rainbow. And they had great bands here in my time. Big Tom was my favourite.
Yeah, I came to the Rainbow here with my mum and dad on the bus from Blacklion. I was only 16 at the time. I wasn't actually the 16. My grandfather and grandmother made the tea down in the kitchen for the bands. They fed them every night. We used to make the sandwiches in Granny's for the bands. But I came here regular then, and then I met my husband here. We're married 55 years. So it was a rainbow romance.
Well, I didn't get to the ballroom till I was 42 years old, because I lived in England and I met my husband, who is from Glenfarne. So I've been coming here since '95, and I always found it fabulous. Plenty of music, plenty of people to jive or waltz with, you know. It's a great place, I love it.
I'm from Glenfarne. I absolutely love the Rainbow. When we were in our teens, whatever, myself and my sisters and our neighbours used to walk down to the end of the road to the Black Rock, and we'd thumb to the Rainbow. And as I say, we used to be just waiting for the first strum of the guitar and out on the floor as soon as we could. But you know, there was great fun and great crack with everybody. And I can remember being one of the lassies standing along the wall watching for Mr. Right to come along. But I remember this night anyway, this fella came along, whatever, to, you know, looking to see someone to dance. And, you know, he was standing kind of in front of me, and, you know, he put out his hand, and, you know, I was kind of straightening myself, but he went past and he asked the girl behind me. But no, as I say, love the Rainbow, love the dancing, and as I say, it's anytime it's great to jive around that great floor, there's nowhere else like it.
The memories I have of my aunt going to the dances, we were only kids at the time, and we would watch her getting ready, and they usually had lovely dresses, taffetal dresses, and a neighbour up the road actually used to do the dressmaking and would make the dresses for them. But we always tried out the high heels. We had a test run on them usually on a Sunday around Granny's kitchen, because my aunt lived where Granny lived, and that was just up the road from where I lived. And she was Mum's sister. She was her only sister. So we had good memories of back then. It would have been the mid 55, 56 era, because I was only very young at the time. So we have the memories of them going to the dances and bringing home everything from the dance. And as my granny and granddad worked here at the teas, and we would make sandwiches in our kitchen for the bands, and there was no pubs, like it was having tea and sandwiches. And when I started the dances, it was tea and sandwiches. The mineral bar, Club Orange, is what we had. They always brought back all the show band postcards. We had boxes of all the show bands, the Melody Aces and Big Tom, and Big Tom wasn't really in then, but it was the Melody Aces and the Skyrockets and all them leading bands back then. So it was good times getting ready for the dances. My aunt was big into dancing. She loved dancing. And the neighbours, they were all girls that were around seemingly at the time, and they all used to congregate in Granny's. And the bus would come from Belcoo, and the new road, the N16, wasn't there at the time. It was the old road, and we lived on the old road, and the bus would stop at every person that was out. They would know they were going to the Rainbow because they were dressed up, and drop them off at the houses, then coming back again. So it was good memories of back then. I enjoyed it. Any occasion there was in the Rainbow, they did, a dress costume, and Stroke Tuesday night was a big night. All the locals all dressed up with different things, and they came here to the Rainbow. And there's a lot of the people in the picture now that's here has passed away now, so they have quite a lot of them, yeah. But I know faces. I can put names on a good few faces. Yeah. The hairstyles were perms, because they would put the rollers in the hair, and they had perm and stuff which smelt disgusting. I could still smell the stuff they used to put in the hairs, and they had rollers in the hair on a Sunday, and they would be getting ready all day on a Sunday basically with the rollers in the hair. And my aunt's hair, they were quite bushy, they would the kind of hairstyles they had, not close cut hairstyles they would have nowadays, so. It was interesting, and red lipstick was a big thing. It seemed to be the redder the better. And the dresses were mainly waisted and going out, kind of, with stiff slips underneath some of them. And the high heels were basically the same as nearly the high heels is now. There was nothing different with them, really.
Hold hands. Hold hands. And a 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, tap, in, 2, 3, 2, 3, kick, 5, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, tap, in, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1 more, round the house, hold hands, and that's you.